All right, so this was the big thing that I guess Roland was looking forward to. This was Werewolf by Night. It was the black and white horror thriller that was kind of a throwback to oldies horror movies, but set in the MCU. It was a departure from a lot of the things that we've seen from Marvel, in that it really goes into classic horror and veers away from just superhero stuff. It introduces a new kind of mythology into the MCU. I think at the end we kind of get a tie-in, but having said all of that, I really didn't understand what I was watching at all.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. They kind of just like, hey, just so you know, this is MCU, but there's a whole another world in this connected world.
Can you
Yeah.
explain it to me? Because I
Yeah.
don't understand any of it. I like, granted, I watched it in two parts. Because at first I was like sleepy and I was like, I don't know what's going on. I couldn't latch on to anything. And then I
Yeah.
went back and I watched the rest of it and I was like, I still don't really understand any of this. What's going on with this thing?
So basically, by the way, I was a monster boy as a kid. I've always been into monsters, ghouls, all that stuff. That was always my jam. I went werewolf hunting as a child. It wasn't good because there was coyotes and stuff, and I had to go home. But I've always just had a fascination with this. And basically, Werewolf by Night just kind of starts off saying, hey, we are in the MCU, but this is a totally different world inside the world, a world that isn't really shown, a world that's filled with monsters and all these supernatural things. And then we kind of see this almost like fairy tale book
Yeah.
of the journal of the Bloodstone patriarch who, spoiler alert, is dying, who died, and we're, like we see the funeral later, but we see some of these supernatural creatures and we see this and that and kind of like hints and like even a nod to Bigfoot if you go back and look at it. And we walk into this beautiful trophy room which has all these like monster heads in it, and we are introduced to these interesting characters, honestly, that are like hunters,
Yeah.
including Jack Russell. I don't think they ever say his last name, but that is his name. Um, it's not his birth name, I should say that.
Yeah.
But basically, just he goes in and they start talking, and you can kind of tell this world building of what's going on. And then, Elsa Bloodstone comes in, and we find out that this is a hunt of who is going to be the new leader for this organization of killing monsters. If you couldn't tell from all the trophies in that room, there's a lot of really cool Easter eggs. Nothing really connecting to a lot of like Marvel comics, but just cool things to look at. This is really a cool effects. And we get into it and we learn a little more about Jack and realize that he is different. Just because he has a lot of kills, that doesn't mean that they're monster kills necessarily. And
Yeah.
he's not there to actually hunt. Then we see ManThing, which was so awesome to see. ManThing is Marvel's version of Swamp Thing.
Hmm.
And fun fact about those two characters were created by people who were roommates in college,
Really?
and they came out around the same year. So don't know how that worked out. That's always been like a long running joke.
Wait, who copied who?
We'll
That's
never know.
Yeah, exactly. I
Interesting.
think I think Man Thing predates Swamp Thing, or I don't know. Honestly, somebody could Google that.
Well, yeah, it's
But
50-50,
yeah,
Either one came
Well,
first or the other.
I will say watching this, like, it was refreshing to see the horror tropes, that sort of noir lighting. I think they nailed
yes,
it aesthetically in a lot of places. Although some of the CGI stuff still feels like Marvel CGI stuff when they put it in there, and it did sort of, scream out to me. I wonder if it's any easier or harder to do that stuff in black and white and make it still look good. But I would venture to say it would probably be easier because you can obscure things in shadows. But that's neither here nor there.
yeah, you can
Um,
definitely hide some stuff.
yeah, I felt like this was, I don't know, I didn't really have any context. And between all the battles and chase scenes, I was a little bored by the story. Is this a story thing for you, or do you think this is just sort of a doorway into expanding the MCU, and a stylistic one at that?
I think this is a very fun way of a kind of special introduction to a whole like different thing that's a part of Marvel Comics and has been part of the Marvel Comics since like almost the beginning of Marvel. You know, they had all these like amazing tales of adventure where they're
Right.
doing creature features, and this has been a big part of the comics for so long, and they have so much fun stuff that they've done in like the past, I don't know, two
Yeah.
decades.
No, the
You
creature
know?
features is a really cool thing to get into.
Yes.
But I don't know if it necessarily needs to be, interconnected. Do you think that they're going to try and merge these with other superheroes, or try to make sort of a horror MCU that's self-contained?
Um, with and we I think we were kind of talking about this when we were talking about the Blade delay. I do think that they're gonna start doing like the Midnight Suns and talk about like dark Marvel, and really delve into the monsters that are secretly hidden. I think
Mm,
there's a lot of potential, and after seeing the positive feedback with this and the positive feedback with Moon Knight, which, as we all know, came from a Werewolf by Night comic book, and they kind of hint at it in the show. They're seeing that people are liking this, and there's a lot of potential to work with.
Well, it is a
So,
nice break from, superhero, supervillain. And I do
yeah.
remember, like, superheroes used to fight monsters every once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
We don't see a whole lot of that. Everything since the original Spider-Man run, the Sony one, it hasn't been like this weird thing emerged. It's some disaffected guy who's in a horrible accident who has a gripe with society, and the
Yeah.
superhero needs to stand up against him. But like regular monsters, where there's no
Yeah.
political agenda, there's no like gripe with society. It's just rah, and it's like, I gotta fix this problem. Give me a second.
Yeah.
That's
Literally.
that's kind of nice to see.
Yeah, and fighting like superheroes fighting against monsters, that was the classic. You
Yeah.
go back even before comics, you look at like stories from like medieval times, they're fighting dragons. You go back even more, they're fighting this creature with Beowulf, and then we have Greek mythology or the Minotaur.
It's
That
it's
was the
it's
thing.
interesting because, when you introduce this kind of thing, again, I have to ask yourself, why are they making these things now? But
Hmm.
like, this obscures evil back to looming threat, you know, survival thing. When you don't have like, because monsters don't really have motives besides survival and eating generally. They want to like eat the people in the city, or they want to destroy things, or they're wild and they need to be tamed. Like,
Yeah.
do you think that that says anything about the messaging in this, that like this isn't about disagreements so much as
Oh,
threats?
100%. I think that's even why they tried to go with the black and white filter, because you can even say that Elsa Bloodstone, who is not exactly the protagonist, but she almost is really, her worldview is black and white. It's always been the monsters versus the humans. And
Yeah.
then Jack, comes up, shows that there's actually like, that's not the full story. And then you see ManThing, who's just protecting himself and all this stuff, and realize, oh wait, there's a little more that's going on that I never realized. And so when she finally gets that bloodstone and kind of helps Jack escape and realize that there is humanity in these inhuman things,
Yeah.
that's when the bloodstone color, that's always been the only source of color in the whole thing,
Yeah.
starts spreading into the world and showing that things aren't black and white. So I think that's a great way of putting it.
That's a classic Wizard of Oz technique of
Yeah.
playing black and white against color to make a statement. And that's, this certainly had more imagination. Um,
Mhm.
I just didn't see much of a story yet. But as we know, this was only an hour long, which is shorter than just about everything else Marvel's been asking you to watch lately.
And a
And
Not
great
even an hour.
time,
It's like
by the way.
yeah,
54
a-
minutes. Yeah.
54 minutes.
Yeah.
And what it is, it's a preamble of what's to come. And I think that,
Yeah.
you know, I'm into it. It's a different direction than we've been heading. And I think we're kind of burnt out on this person versus this person with an opposing worldview, because
Yeah.
that's not really an escape from everyday life, is it?
Yeah. We like a
And
good melodrama, but every once in a while you gotta change it up.
I think so.
And I just want to say, dude, props to Marvel for making Man-Thing look so cool. I thought he was adorable and there was so much detail. And I don't know if you noticed, but if you look in his like eyes, when he's like angry, the pupils are like very spread out. And then once Elsa calls him by his real name, Ted, it comes back together in this almost human-esque eyes.
That's
So
nice.
there's
Yeah,
a lot of
little
fun
touches.
details that I really enjoyed with this. And
Yeah.
the Werewolf by Night. I'm usually a little weird when they show the like a human face, but I think it really worked.
I think,
like-
especially with the callback to the 1930s aesthetic, I think it worked really nicely.
Yeah.
That's classic horror, and just in time for Halloween. That's a look you could pull off.
Yeah.
So go for it, people.
Yeah.
Werewolf was a favorite costume
I
of
mean-
mine growing up.
Same.
In a world where we have, Planet of the Apes, Andy Serkis is acting the heck out of a motion capture suit so that they can do a total CGI ape.
Yeah.
You get something like this, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is a
Well,
really
what I
good
really
throwback.
like?
Yeah.
Not just a good throwback, but it's really nice, to put that in the same movie as something with crazy CGI like Man-Thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you can do both. And, it's not so much about, the incredible transformation sequence. It's like, no, there's still a man there and you can pretend. And I like that playfulness that's still in it. But at the same time, you can have this crazy monster next to you that's beautifully crafted.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of like a big point in horror films is that horror has always tried to get like the best technology it can. When the 1980s hit, they kind of like found the wonders of latex, I guess, and started body horror and just was like upping the ante with
A lot of Cronenberg
puppets
stuff.
and animatronics and all this stuff like that. And then we get into CGI and getting more and more crazy. And this kind of how I saw it shows like you can have the best CGI and you can also have something super awesome with practical effects like the werewolf. It just
it's nice. We're seeing that balance play out between practical and computer generated, and we've been asking for that for a long time. Something like She-Hulk probably could take a lesson from Werewolf by Night.
In She-Hulk, I was gonna say they actually have this woman who's like 6'7", like a real person, who they use as their reference within scenes for the She-Hulk anime. So they probably shoot the real woman who's wearing all these same clothes as Tatiana Maslany's character would be in the She-Hulk model, CGI model would be. And then they replace the whole thing with a CGI model. And there was a part of me was thinking, why don't they just paint her green?
Paint her
And
green.
then do a face replacement. But
oh my gosh.
I can see how that might not work all the time.
Paint her
but
green.
I don't know. I mean, I like this. This is certainly a better transformation than what you saw in Professor Lupin transforming into a werewolf in Harry Potter. I was never a fan of like what that turned into. This looks like, okay, this would have been scarier, right? Because you're like, there's still a person there, and you know this thing could exist in real life because it has like those human eyes. Whereas if you turn into a CGI werewolf, I just don't, like you are suspending your disbelief, but it's less likely that you're subconsciously thinking, what are the chances I'm going to run into this thing in real life? So you're scared for the people on screen, but you don't think that will ever happen to you. That guy could like show up in my house at some point and just like tear me to shreds because he looks like that could be real. Like I don't know. Anyway,
I don't want to get too crazy with the conversation, but I will say that I did like the Harry Potter werewolf. I thought it was a very fun design and very freaky. I mean, if I saw a hairless cat looking thing like that, I would be scared so much. But I don't want to get too crazy.
Know.
Going
I wasn't a
against
big fan.
I mean, it looks like Rotten Tomatoes likes this thing. It sounds like you liked it. I was a little lost, but at the same time, I can appreciate the aesthetic statement and the new direction for Marvel. Any final word on this where like you can just say yeah, the good thing to watch. Like
I think it's just awesome that finally the critics and audience are agreeing on something.
on one thing, yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised. And it's got over 1,000 audience reviews. And I mean, 73 for a TV show or TV movie, 73 critics reviews gets you around or like certified fresh rating, which is good.
Yeah.
So,
I'm actually kind of
Yeah.
charmed by the fact that it's 54 minutes and yet everybody watched it and it wasn't, like there's hype around it. People like it. There's enthusiasm for reviewing it and talking about it. And it's the exact opposite of, another miniseries that you can watch, for 7 hours.
That's what I thought it
straight.
would be. And then I was like, but wait, isn't everything else that they're doing on Disney Plus a miniseries anyway? So how would this be different? Then I saw like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just a 54-minute TV movie, basically. It's like, okay.
yeah.
And those two numbers, 92, 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. I know Rotten Tomatoes isn't the be all end all to judge how good something is,
No,
but
it really
this
isn't.
it really right. But like this is on to that end though. This is the only project that I think in Phase 4 of the MCU, maybe other than WandaVision. I think WandaVision might have had similar kind of ratings, where the two numbers are in the 90s, and there's like agreement at that high of a level, which for the MCU is a good thing, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, and I'll put one more cap on this and just say, like, I think we're ready to have shorter content. I think people have gotten lazy with writing and editing, and they're just taking the long way around the bush for everything, around the barn, not the bush. Around the barn, the long way around the barn. They're taking the long route when they could be a lot more efficient with their storytelling. They could get the point across faster. They don't have to linger on so much because as we leave pandemic lifestyle where we had nothing to do but watch television, we don't need you to fill up 12 hours of our day anymore. 1 hour is sufficient, and do a good job with it, and then I'll come back and watch the next thing you make. I think this is a good direction to head in.
Yeah. You don't have to stretch out everything. I feel like that's a lot of people's complaints with Disney shows is that this could have been so good if they just kept it at an hour or just like a simple movie to kind of keep that magic contained.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little too much information now. But if you want more information, subscribe to all of the channels. We'll talk about all this stuff as long as we possibly can. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, Spotify, other things. Anywhere. We're up. We even got our own thing. Find us on the internet and be part of this conversation. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Let us know what you think.